It's never too late. It's never too late to create the life of your dreams, the life you desire. And now is the time. The world needs us.
Welcome to Reclaim Your Voice, a podcast for women in business who are ready to lead with more clarity, more ownership, and more confidence in who they already are. I'm Savanna Madden, confidence coach, public speaker, and the founder of award-winning theatre school Madden Theatre Arts. This is not about becoming someone new, it's about returning to your voice and leading in a way that feels aligned. Here we explore confidence, leadership, visibility, business growth, and the real shifts that happen as you evolve. If you know you're capable of more, you're in the right place. This is Reclaim Your Voice. Hello and welcome back to the show. Today, I am not only joined by an amazing guest, but also a great friend of mine. She is a visionary midlife mentor and embodiment coach and the founder of Mature Eros. So Sally Berg, welcome to Reclaim Your Voice.
Woo! Thank you, Savannah, for a lovely warm welcome. It is absolutely amazing to be here, and I love nothing more than speaking about Mature Eros and my purpose and vision, and to do that with you is an added pleasure. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here, Sally. So I always like to get going straight away. So let's get to the crux of it. Tell us, Sally, who are you? Who do you serve? What do you do for people that maybe have never, ever heard of you before?
Well, I'm very excited to share this because I am sexy at 60, living my most vibrant, juicy, turned-on life. And it has not always been this way. And my own healing and blossoming journey, I call it Sal's greatest hits, is I have curated the most amazing practices from learning tantra for 15 years, lots of embodiment exercises, deep healing work from a very traumatic childhood, which I'll talk a bit more about later, but all the modalities that have supported me to become radiant, magnetic, and feel more alive and purposeful than I ever have in my life gave me the incentive to launch Mature Eros, because I believe that a mature, embodied woman in her pleasure, like fierce boundaries, open heart, is the revolution that the world needs right now. And most women are running on cortisol, they are stressed, their nervous systems are fried. And so these practices are simple but very effective and deep, and they support women to ease their nervous system, to reduce cortisol, and just to live their best lives. It's an inside job.
So we're going to get into these practices and these things that we can do to lower our cortisol, increase our oxytocin. But when you're saying that you're talking about living a turned on life, what does that actually mean in, proper layman's terms, simple everyday language? What are we talking about here, Sally?
So when I talk about living a turned on life, this is not about having sex. That can be the cherry on the cake. But this living a turned on life is about reclaiming our own erotic aliveness, which becomes like rocket fuel for all of life. And most women have been conditioned to outsource their pleasure or to think that pleasure is frivolous and is very low down the list. We don't prioritize ourselves. Once we hit midlife, particularly, we've spent decades caring for others, serving others, putting everyone before ourselves, and holding down demanding careers, right? So it's no wonder that the wheels fall off a bit. We've all seen Motherland. I think we are in a female midlife health crisis. And there's been talk, I saw a Guardian piece about midlife mental health crisis, but I believe that it's actually a disconnection crisis, a disconnection from the body that creates the mental health crisis. It starts in the body. And so living a turned on life for me is reclaiming our bodies, coming back to our bodies, to our senses. Our bodies become a brain taxi and our bodies get neglected. And when our bodies get neglected, we disconnect from all of life. We disconnect from our sensuality, from our feelings, from our emotions, because we're often in a lot of coping mechanisms. And particularly for female bodies, there's no outer safety in the world. So what happens is we armor up, always bracing, hypervigilant, looking out for actual or perceived danger. But this creates armoring, which means we then become disconnected from feeling, and that reduces us to feeling like that rather than that. I call it full spectrum living. When we can feel the depths of our despair and grief, we can feel the heights of our ecstasy. But often we're trying to protect ourselves from feeling too much. But what that does is it cuts off our sensuality and our vibrancy. So living a turned on life is about reclaiming our feelings, our emotions, the depth of our hearts, really opening our hearts to life, because opening our hearts to life is a portal to a more vibrant life. But when we're numb and disconnected, that's when the issues start. That can create stress, anxiety, sleeping problems, and just feeling like we're not quite ourselves. And so many midlife women, I think, they lose themselves in life, the caring and serving of others and the busy jobs and the busy life. And I think so many wake up and think, well, who am I now? I can't remember who I am. A lot of women that I work with, I say, how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know. They've become disconnected from how they actually
Numb.
feel. Numb. Exactly. Numb. And of course, with the world being on fire, we become more numb because that's our natural response. Our bodies, bless them, are doing their best to protect us by numbing out. But in actual fact, what I've learned as someone who suffered from serious depression for 5 years when I was dealing with a lot of my childhood issues is that shutting down and numbing out is not the way to live a full spectrum life, not the way to live a full life. We think we're protecting ourselves, but it's something we have to reprogram and recalibrate and relearn in the body to create. When we start creating inner safety through easing our nervous system and start cultivating oxytocin, the feel-good hormone that reduces cortisol naturally, this is like a magic medicine in the body that creates a perception of outer safety, because we can't control what's happening in the world, right? We can't control out there, but we do have control about what's happening inside. That's the work. That's where we need to start. Inner work and inner love.
What I'm getting from all of that is that so many people are either feeling really numb or really stressed. And if they're really stressed, the cortisol levels are going up through the roof, which is not good for anybody. So we want to be increasing our oxytocin. So at the very beginning of when you began speaking after my initial question, you said about how people sometimes hear the phrase turned on and think it's all about sex, and you've sort of debunked all of that. But you also talk a lot about pleasure as well. So what kind of things are you doing with your clients that are producing this oxytocin and pleasure so that it isn't about the sexual connotation that we may have with that word pleasure?
That's a great question. And it's really important that I'm really clear about this, because pleasure is actually a priority, not a frivolous thing. And again, that conditioning to think that pleasure is always linked to sex. And as women, we've been taught to outsource our pleasure, that it's coming from outside of us, whether it's the touch of a lover or an experience or a new Gucci handbag. We've been conditioned to think that pleasure is not within our control or within our realm. It's something that's coming from outside of us. So that's why I'm so passionate about this work, because this kind of pleasure is something that we create for ourselves. We cultivate it for ourselves as medicine for the body. Because what I find fascinating is cortisol creates inflammation, brain fog, drop in libido, weight gain, and it can lead to autoimmune diseases. Now, those set of symptoms are often what are linked to menopausal symptoms, right? And it's in my research and learnings, what I've learned is that in Western culture, those symptoms are much more prevalent than in other cultures. So what I'm learning is that I think a lot of menopausal symptoms are more to do with cortisol than something around menopause. The symptoms will come up, but they are messages from the body to say that you're getting too stressed, you're doing too much, you're pushing too hard, because most women have been push for a very long time in their masculine energy, which is what ramps up the cortisol. So the brilliant thing about oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, is it naturally reduces cortisol. And if we start with that, if we start reducing the cortisol, that then starts resetting the nervous system into an easeful state. It starts cultivating pleasurable feelings in the body that sort of reduce stress and anxiety, help us sleep better. So what I've created with my unique Reclaimed Woman methodology are programs that specifically weave into a busy life And I've got practices that I call love bites. So these are like little nibbles of love that you weave into your day, like 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. But they're very effective practices to soothe the vagal nerve, soothe the nervous system, bring you back to center. And these are simple things like humming, dancing, circling your hips, shaking. There's lots of really simple little bite-sized practices that can bring you back to center very quickly. But the secret is what I call habit stacking. So it's about committing to saying, yes, I will do these throughout the day. As you will know, this work doesn't work unless you actually engage with it and show up for it. So I have the practical, I've put together these very carefully curated little practices, and there's like a 10-minute in the morning, little love bites, and 5 minutes in the evening. So I feel like if someone really wants to change their life, they will say, yes, of course I can commit to that. Because also what's woven into it is some deep inquiry around reframing the narrative about aging. We live in a youth obsessed culture that says we're all on a trajectory to becoming dried up old bags. And as I said, sexy at 60, I'm here to debunk a few myths about that as well, because it's not true. And a lot of these stories that are projected onto us as women have been because we've been kept confined within patriarchal systems that have dimmed us and kept us believing that if we keep chasing youth, then we will be acknowledged and recognized in our culture, particularly by the male gaze. And I want to be clear, when I talk about patriarchal systems, they've been damaging for everyone. This is not about man bashing at all. I love men. And, patriarchy has brutalized boys and men as well as done a lot of damage to us. So again, that's why I'm so passionate about this work, because what I see that the world needs right now is vibrant, mature, female-led leadership. The masculine-led leadership, well, we've seen what's playing out and what that's led us to right now. So feminine-led leadership includes men, but I feel like there's a particular piece around midlife and beyond women right now, in the world, is like, if we can cultivate this vibrant energy in ourselves, it is like rocket fuel for life. It is nourishing, life-giving, and it will give us the energy and capacity to hold ourselves and others in what's to come. We can step into being elders and leaders. This is turned on female leadership at its best. And our culture particularly, we don't have elders per se as a lot of indigenous cultures have. We become elderly, very different connotation. Elderly seems like, parked off in the shadows, a bit marginalized, kit on the knee with a flask of tea and a rich tea biscuit.
Yeah, packed off somewhere where we don't really have to speak to them, that kind of horrible, that horrible stereotype of you get to a certain age and you're a bit past it, aren't you?
A bit past it.
Awful.
Yeah. It's just awful. And we haven't been celebrating what my friend calls the QBL, qualified by life.
Oh, yeah. Love that. Because people who have aged have got so much wisdom. There's so much we can learn from people who have got more age than ourselves. And I had such a close bond with both my grandmothers, and they're no longer with us anymore. They're both such wonderful women and had such great stories for the era that they lived in, and were incredibly inspirational to me because of the things that they stuck up for or fought for and what they believed in and things. So yeah, I'm a massive flag flyer for people who have got more age or more numbers on me, because I think you can just learn so much from others, isn't there?
Exactly. As you said, storytelling particularly is so important. And I feel the poignancy of that as well. And particularly when I'm talking about women, because I work mostly with women, it feels like, everyone's sick to death of vacuous celebrities and all the, the gurus toppling off their pedestals. This is not time for top-down structure. This is time for spiraling and circling, weaving together, not putting one above the other, of learning together, collaborating, co-creating magic. And for real women to be telling real stories. There's an organization that I've done some networking with, and she's all about give a woman a microphone And here we are. It's like time that we share our stories, we share our wisdom, because these are challenging times, but extraordinary times that we live in. And I feel like what people need is to feel connected. They want to feel a sense of community. They want to feel togetherness. They want to feel vulnerability and to share their grief, to have a space to share their feelings. And when we tell our real life stories, that connects us because it drops us into our truth, our integrity, our vulnerability, and we can feel each other from the heart. It creates connection rather than separation and division, which of course we've seen a lot of that playing out right now. And, the powers that be at the moment who are fighting hard to keep control are doing their damnedest to divide and conquer and separate us. I feel like there's this groundswell of us saying, fuck that shit. We are here to connect, to love each other, to find more in our similarities than our differences. Let's find the similarities. Let's connect. And like, for example, last Sunday, I had a very sticky few days, a lot of grief coming up. And I went to my local community ecstatic dance on a Sunday. And it was just absolutely beautiful. We all cried together, we danced together, we laughed together. We had birthday cake afterwards. It was somebody's birthday. And I just left feeling like so in my heart. And I feel like that's what I'm about. I'm about supporting community and weaving women together. And I have this big vision with Mature Eros to turn on as many women as possible, to bring them together in their pleasure and joy and turn on, because in the spirit of that, we are unstoppable, when we're in this energy. And it's like pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And people might think, how can she talk about pleasure when the world is on fire, when there's so much suffering? It's like, well, how can I not? Because I'm not going to help anyone if I'm collapsing down into drama, being a victim, thinking, oh my God, the world's gone to shit. That's not supportive of anything. That's a reaction. I'm all about responsiveness, and I want to cultivate responsiveness in people. And that's how we do it, as far as I'm concerned, is cultivating pleasure in our bodies so that we can stay open-hearted, we can stay connected, we can be in our vibrancy and our energy. And there's a brilliant woman called Adrienne Marie Brown who's written a book called Pleasure Activism. And I feel like that's what I'm championing as well. I've been a fierce social and community activist in my time, 20 years in South Africa as an ally to the local marginalized communities, which was amazing. I feel like now is the time for pleasure activism. Because when we resource ourselves with pleasure, we can wake up and think, I can go and clean that river this weekend. I can do a fundraiser for my favorite charity. So actually, pleasure becomes our greatest resource. It's not a luxury.
Not a luxury. So for someone listening right now who just is thinking to themselves, I feel so disconnected from myself at the moment, kind of like that numbness that we were talking about, and they identify with loads of the things you were saying, what would be one of those little love bites that you would suggest they begin with, just to kind of try and get some sort of semblance of like reset and let's just stop a moment, press pause?
Yeah, well, for me, it's dance every day, because dancing activates oxytocin in the body. It gets our bodies moving. It sort of disrupts our patterns of being like in this mode. And the more you can disrupt the patterns in your body and move things, the more you are going to open to feel more. You're going to ease your nervous system, and you're going to cultivate joy in your body. So I always say, like, put on a banging tune, put on Beyonce while you're making the school lunch boxes and dance around the kitchen. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Just stick on a great tune and just dance. And then to actually think, that felt really good, actually. Because this is the thing as well of like, closing the loop of actually then receiving what you feel. Is very difficult for women to receive often as well, and to receive our own pleasure, because again, of the disconnection. So to dance and then just spend a moment, like put your hand on your heart, a hand over your belly, and just think, wow, that felt really good. I can do that again, because it's incremental as well. The more you do these things, the better you will feel. And the brilliant things about our bodies is that they really respond well to us giving them loving attention. And I'm a big fan of just some self-soothing and self-touch as well. Just stroking your face gently, rubbing your hands together like this, just awakening your senses is really, really powerful. And this is coming from someone, these practices really work. My programs really work because I have been face down in the dirt, covered in snot and tears many times in my life. I grew up with a bipolar alcoholic father who was violent. He was sexually abusive, and I was a very sensitive child. And this sort of shut me down to my own feeling body. And I sort of created a persona that I called Sally Sunshine, the all singing, all dancing, coping person. And I was in a happy marriage for decades, but I never really felt safe to be fully sexual in my own body. I always struggled to orgasm and to feel pleasure. And then after I had children, I then got this serious depression for 5 years when I was really trying to grapple with what had happened to me as a child, started doing some serious therapy. And this depression actually was the biggest gift of my life because it sort of pulled the rug from under me and just slayed this Sally Sunshine persona. I mean, I was just literally like, could hardly get up from under the duvet every day. But it was such a gift because it meant I had to really dive deep to do the healing that was needed. And that's when Tantra found me. I walked into a restaurant one evening at the end of this depression, and this woman walked in and she was just radiant. And I was like, who the fuck is that? I want what she's got. And I went over to her and I was like, who are you? You look amazing. She wasn't what might be called conventionally like pretty or beautiful in the, in the sort of standards that we maybe have. Yeah. But she just was like magnetic and radiant. Anyway, she was Shakti Milan, bless her. And she was my first Tantra teacher. And I signed up on the spot and I worked with her for 10 years. And she literally saved my life. I was literally at a point where I was like, I'm not sure I even want to be here anymore. I feel absolutely shit every day. And it was just blasted me open to all of life. And what's interesting is I now get similar reflections, like when I hold workshops at festivals and things. And if I share that story, women will come up to me and go, well, that's how we feel about you. Because it is this radiance and magnetism that comes, it's an inside job. As I said, it comes from the inside out. And again, we've been taught as women that, buy another cream, buy another this, that. We've been so taught to buy things to try and make ourselves look and feel better. Whereas actually, if we give a bit more attention to the inside, it starts radiating out from us. And it's so much more powerful and so much more sustainable. This is deep systemic change in our bodies. I was also sexually frozen for like 8 years at the last years of my marriage. And I thought, I was 57 and I thought, oh, well, I'm never going to have sex again. I'm never going to feel turned on again. It's like, that's just how it is. We're going to be companions. And again, this was another seminal moment like the depression where he revealed that he hadn't actually been in love with me for years. I thought, God, do I want to live with that for the rest of my life? I thought, no. And so we set each other free and it was amicable and it was okay, but we said thank you and goodbye. And I just want to say to all the women out there in their 50s and 60s, it's never too late. It's never too late to create the life of your dreams, the life you desire. And now is the time. The world needs us. The world needs mature women in this second chapter to bring their QBL, the qualified by life, bring their wisdom, their embodied enthusiasm and vibrancy. And, this has been life-changing for me. I'm now launching my soul purpose business because I let go of the old. So things have to die as well. I call it like the hero's journey. It takes courage. And the French translation of the word courage is la rage du cœur, the raging heart. And it is our raging, passionate hearts that are going to see us through the shit show that's happening out there. Our raging hearts full of courage to keep believing and keep showing up every day with this vibrancy. That is the way.
So on this podcast, we talk a lot about confidence and using your voice. I think you've been doing that beautifully, Sally.
Thank you.
And your identity. I feel like without saying that word, you have talked us through so much about how you have evolved over the last sort of 20, 30 years, and even just in the last maybe like 3 years as well,
Yeah.
since the ending of your marriage. And I just feel like your main goal in life is just to not let your identity fade or feel like you have lost yourself and you can't get yourself back. And perhaps you might
Mm.
never ever get the old version of you back, because you might evolve continuously into a newer version of yourself. Because I always like to talk about you're not trying to be somebody different. You're not faking it till you make it. We're not putting any masks on here. We're reconnecting with that person that is inside us, but we may have many, many, many different identities in our life. So
Mm.
what do you think, apart from living your most turned on life, what else do you think needs to change as the female race age and as we get older? What does need to change for us to evolve?
I love that question. And I love the inquiry around identity because, again, I think for women, they create a certain identity, whether that is, mother, lover, wife, work colleague. And we identify with those identities, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I feel is it can be harmful for us is if we hang on too tightly to a certain identity. If we identify with our identity too much, it creates stagnation and we become a bit calcified. We could become a bit stuck. And I think again that becomes part of this, the nervous system bracing and getting hypervigilant, because we're meant to evolve, we're meant to change, but change takes a lot of courage, takes the rage du coeur, right? The raging heart, because it's messy AF and uncomfortable AF to create systemic, meaningful change and to let go of an identity. And from studying Tantra, there's a term a book that I can't remember right now, but it's called Killing Your Darlings. And for me, that is part of this evolution of the woman is, are you prepared to kill that one or kill that identity that has served you thus far? And, that's why for me, ritual and ceremony is so important. There's many times I might have had a little ritual and said, thank you, Sally Sunshine. Thank you. You really served me well at that time. It's often a coping mechanism as well. Our identities can become coping mechanisms. But sometimes we need to say thank you, but I don't need all of you right now. I'm going to let some of Sally Sunshine die. I'll keep the bits that I quite like, the wild party girl that I am as well. I'll keep some of Sally Sunshine because she is genuine, but some of it was a persona, a mask, a coping mechanism. So I feel like this is again where, we don't have these rites of passage in our culture, as a lot of indigenous cultures do. And that's again part of what I bring into my programs is framing menopause as a rite of passage, not a condition to be feared or fixed, as we've been told, another illness that, oh God, give me a fucking pill, make it all go away. Because these rites of passage, it's like going through a birth canal. Yes, it's going to squeeze us tightly. Yes, it's going to bring up challenges. But if we can stay open and curious through our cycles as women, then we can actually sort of transcend and move through them in a way that is meaningful, that is this Shiro's journey. We can see discomfort coming up as an opportunity because our body might be giving us a message. There's something wrong with us. We don't need fixing. The symptoms of menopause are there to flag up certain things like, maybe you're pushing too hard. Maybe you need to rest more. Menopause, pause a bit more and so it's an opportunity to recalibrate out of old ways of being, old ways of doing that are not serving us. So that's where the courage comes in, because it takes courage to disrupt old patterns and create change. But when we do, if we let certain things die that are not serving us, certain ways of being, certain patterns, certain relationships, then it can open up a whole new realm of fresh opportunity and energy. And that is a really important piece for women, to really honor the cycles, the rites of passage, and to have the courage to let certain things die so that new things can be born. We're cyclical beings. We work in sync with nature. And again, we've become disconnected from her, from nature. So if we plug back into that natural rhythm and life and cycles, that things will die. But when we let things die, new things blossom, like the flowers behind me.
Oh, I love that because I think, oh gosh, couldn't agree with you more. Like the amount of times that I have had a label stuck on me that I'm like, I just don't identify with that. I remember when I was at college, I was one of the oldest in my year, and everyone called me like the mother of the group, and I did not feel like that at all. And I was like, no, I do not identify with this. And that's just one example of many moments where things like that have happened to me, which I'm sure has happened to everybody at some stage in life. And I think as well, maybe people who are close to us, family members, really close friends, can also label us from our childhood and then not be
Mm.
able to get rid of it as we get older. I know that that's definitely happened to me as well. So I think people just need to give themselves more permission and just go, do you know what? This is my life. I'll do exactly what I want. And if I'm going to, evolve more into whatever it is, then just go for it and get on with it.
That's exactly why, my programs are called The Reclaimed Woman, because it is reclaiming our sovereignty and saying, this is
Yes.
who I am now, doing that work to peel away the layers and the bullshit of what's not serving us right now, to let go of people pleasing and fawning. Very important piece for women, particularly as we hit
Hmm.
midlife. It's like this cycle of caring for, serving others, of reaching a point of probably total exhaustion and frazzledness. But, we have to take responsibility for that as well. We have to let go of people pleasing, fawning, trying to be all things to all people, and like remember who we
Setting
really are.
boundaries to
Setting
not fall into all of that.
boundaries.
Because so many people of my age as well are, because I definitely fall into this category. My parents aren't elderly, but they are, getting to that sort of phase of life. They're both retired, and I have a very young child as well. So I'm caring for a young child with the incredible support of my partner, who is a fantastic dad. But we've both got aging parents as well. So
Yeah.
we're in that category. And I know that there are so many people that are in our shoes at the moment.
Yes, well, we're called the sandwich generation. I don't know if you've
That's it.
heard that.
That's it.
The
That's it.
sandwich
Yeah.
generation. Like if you chose to have kids, you probably did it a bit later. So you've got younger
Yeah.
children, you've got aging parents, you've got a full-time demanding career. So
Hmm.
is it any wonder that the wheels are falling off for a
Yeah.
lot of midlife
Exactly.
women? I mean, I don't think we've ever had this stretched.
Yeah, I was born in the 80s, and my mum was classed as, a little bit on the older side, having me when she was 32. So, in the 80s that was not as done, was it? People were having their
Mm.
children in their 20s back then, which obviously people still do that now as well, but it is more common to have your children a little bit later for a lot of people now. I just want to bring it back a little bit more to the key moments that has shaped the work you do now going on your tantra journey. But are there any other like pivotal moments for you that have really inspired the work that you do now?
Well, yes, so much of that really. That was the starting point, and that took me on this incredible healing journey that supported me to work through a lot of my childhood abuse and trauma. So I'm so grateful for that. There's been so many other modalities that I've done, a lot of somatic work, plant medicine, dancing, you name it. I've done like nearly 20 years of very deep healing work. And people would often say to me, "Oh, you should be a facilitator," because I was also an emotional support person in a lot of women's circles and spaces for 10 years when I lived in South Africa. And I loved being that person. And I was always like, no, it's not for me. But what I realize now with looking back is that I was learning all the time because I'm sort of an experiential learner. Yes, I'm nervous and trauma system informed. I've done courses, but I've learned through doing the work myself, embodying it, experiencing it, holding others in really big, difficult processes when I was an emotional support person, so that my nervous system has the capacity to hold myself and others. And like a friend said to me recently, like, you really embody like the dark feminine because you've been there. You've been down in the underworld. You know how that feels. You're not afraid of depth of feeling, of rage, of anger, of grief. I can hold it. I live it. I be with it. So I feel like that's a really important piece that I bring now to my sort of skill set. And also, I went to Egypt just over a year ago, and I was holding a tantric retreat, co-creating it with a friend. We had 12 women. And I literally got a download from the goddess Isis. I got literally stripped to the bone on this trip. Like, she was just like, this is who you are. This is what you belong to. This is what you need to be doing in the world right now. I got the name Mature Eros. I wrote it down. I drew my logo. It was a full mystical download. So, and I've been like this blazing comet ever since, because the download was so synchronistic with all of my life's work and practices. I used to also be a fashion editor and an art director. I set up non-profits as an ally for marginalized communities in South Africa. Had a photography business with my husband. I'm an artist. So it's like, I see that that's where this Mature Eros piece is. I've woven together all of my life's experiences and skills to this one piece. So that's what has birthed it. And that's why it is so rich and juicy and important, because I'm putting everything that I have into this. This is like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life dedicated to supporting women into this, because this is what women need right now. And I've also got ideas to create a curriculum for teenage girls in schools. It's not just that I'm going to work with midlife and menopausal women. A lot of younger women come to me and say, we want to work with you as well. It's not just midlife women who are taking a strain, right? And
I
I
was
feel
going to
like the
say,
younger.
your work applies to everybody. It doesn't really
Yes.
matter about
Yeah.
age.
No, and I've got a big vision for that. Like I say, I had this download about creating something for teenage girls, because you're never going to bring sexuality into schools. It'd be an absolute minefield. But what you can bring is teaching girls, like tween and teenage girls, how to manage their nervous system, how to work with boundaries, how to say no, how to embody their no, not just say it, they need to embody it, so that if there's any predatory behavior going on, predators feel that in women and they won't come near it. Honestly. So for me, that is, that's where we start after the whole shit show of the Epstein files and the toppling gurus that's playing out. It's like, that's why we need to start the work early, to support girls in schools, so that they learn embodiment, boundaries, they learn to protect themselves. That is our sexual life force is actually our greatest protector. Because I had a conversation with a young woman who'd been grappled on a train and harassed. And we had this amazing conversation. I said, cultivating your own sexual life force will protect you more than anything else. It's not by making ourselves smaller or, don't wear that sexy dress, don't put the makeup on. That is all fucking bullshit created by patriarchal systems to infantilize women, to keep them young and scared. And, there was this amazing artist who did this exhibition around what girls and women were wearing when they were raped. And it was like a school uniform, a sweatshirt, a hoodie, an old coat, a pair of pajamas. It's nothing to do with what we're wearing,
And
And
even if you
so,
are wearing a short dress, that doesn't give anybody the power, excuse, or reason to treat you with such disrespect. And
no, no. We should have the freedom to wear what the fuck we want, look as sexy as we want, to own it, to let go of this notion that, oh, men can't control themselves. It's like, they need to do their work and we need to just be in our sovereign power, because we can dress however we want and be as sexy as we want when we have this embodied power. This, like I say, this is our greatest protector. When we're in this sexual power, it becomes the greatest protector. It's so contrary to what we've been actually conditioned to believe, of like, dull it down, dim it down. It's not true. And that's why female sexuality has been shut down for centuries. From when the Roman Empire and Christianity came in, we had these incredible women who were the village oracles, the midwives, the powerful priestesses in the temples. They were like the oracles and the leaders of the communities. They came in and were like, we're going to shut this shit down. Female sexuality was too powerful for the patriarchal system, so they shut it down. That's when the witch hunt started. All those women got called witches and they were persecuted and killed, and so on. And we still carry that witch wound today. And I feel like this is the time in history when it's being disrupted and changed. And that's, again, why I'm so passionate about what I'm bringing, because it ties into that. We're rewriting history. When we embody our sexuality, own our sexuality, live freely with it, we're creating her story, not history.
we need people like you to guide us and lead the way in challenging all of these things, because the more people who use their voice and speak up for these things, the more people will feel safer to do so as well. And
Yes.
everything you've been talking about of collaboration and community and linking
Mm.
arms with one another and, forming all these things together, that is how we're going to become so much stronger. I want to go on a little bit of a different direction now, Sally, because you and I have connected and become friends through speaking, really. Through speaking at events and through spreading our messages and by trying to find other people that want to come on board with us. So you, I think, have actually said that you feel called to speak on stage, maybe not today, but I know you've said it in the past, to lead this movement. So what is it that if someone took one thing from this podcast today, or the next stage talk you do, what's the one thing you want them to take away from it if they don't manage to absorb anything else at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most important messages, because I'm rewriting the narrative about women and aging, to say it's never too late to cultivate pleasure and vibrancy in your body to live a turned on life. You're not getting old. You're just getting started. And I
Yes,
think
I
that's what I
love
would want
that.
women to take away from this is it's never too late to live the life of your dreams, to live this turned on, vibrant life. Your sexuality has no end age, actually, and I know this from working in tantric communities. Like there are women in their 80s having the best sex of their lives. And it doesn't have to be about having sex. We can have pleasure and sex with ourselves. We
That is
don't need a
also true.
partner. We don't
No.
need a partner.
And also, as you said earlier as well, pleasure also doesn't have to be linked in any sexual way either. It can be other amazing things that give you pleasure, right?
Yes, it's becoming more sensual, rather than sexual, becoming, it's more sensual with life. I mean, I can sit outside in my old dressing gown watching the clouds in the morning with my cup of tea. I call it cloud porn, just really enjoying the clouds, and I can feel orgasmic ripples in my body. It's like, yeah, I want every 60-year-old woman to be able to sit out with a cup of tea and feel that. Great way to
Absolutely.
start the day.
Great way to start the day. Thank you. And Sally, what does reclaiming your voice look like to you?
Well, I think for me, reclaiming my voice has been very linked with launching Mature Eros. Reclaiming my voice has been about absolutely owning and understanding that I have some very important things to say because of the life that I've lived, because of the experiences that I've had. So that I have a lot of amazing stories and I've a lot of courage. And so reclaiming my voice has been about using it more in this last year with launching Mature Eros of saying, yes, there's a lot that I have to say and a lot of stories to tell that are inspiring other women. I get such amazing responses and reactions from women around me because these are the voices that they need to hear in these very challenging, difficult times. We need to be the
Mm,
lighthouses to use our voices to support others, not to teach something. I don't ever feel like I'm teaching something. I'm supporting women to remember what they already have. So I'm
mhm.
using my voice to support them to know that they have everything they need inside them. I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm just going to support you as a guide and a mentor to remember to activate this. We've got so much magic in here. So that's me reclaiming my voice.
Amazing. Thank you. Where are you hanging out the most? Where can we find you and connect with you if we want to carry on the conversation, if we want to work with you, if we want to download your freebie? What do we do?
Well, mostly Instagram at the moment. That's where I've got a lot of my material and posts, and I've got a beautiful website and which has a free gift. So if you sign up to my website, you receive 5 easy pathways to pleasure rituals. So some of the like love bite things that I spoke of earlier. So it's really worth signing up to that because then you're on my newsletter and I get lots of amazing little tips and nuggets. And so that's a good place. And then I'm also very open to just having people DM me to ask me questions. I offer a free call and a session. If you're interested to work with me, you can have a free talk and a session, like to work with your nervous system because I feel like it's important people get to feel what I do, not just talk about it. to feel the difference. So to feel my magic. So that's definitely all on offer. You can DM through, mature.eros is my Instagram.
Now, I'll link it all up in the show notes so we can follow you on Instagram, sign up to your web,
Fabulous.
download your freebie, and the invitation is open to connect with you.
The invitation is open. Yeah, because I also love, I want to come and speak more. If you've got, a business or a female founder business where you want me to come and do a talk over a brunch or a lunch, I love coming and inspiring women to talk. And I've also put together a corporate wellness package because I feel like corporate women really need me as well. So that's something I'm really branching into. So if people want to support with women in menopause through HR, I've got an amazing package that can help support them through that and to make them more productive, because we need those women. And so many of them are leaving because they're not getting the support they need through menopause.
Thank you so much, Sally. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Reclaim Your Voice.
Thank you, Savanna. It has been just amazing to be here. What an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Reclaim Your Voice. If today's conversation resonated, then head to the show notes where you'll find my free audio gift. And if this episode helped you in any way, it would mean so much if you shared it, rated, or reviewed the show. That support helps these conversations reach the people who really need them. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.